said that? Who said that? Where are you? Oh, God. For a second, I thought I was all alone. In a closet. In a bunker unknown. What is known is that this is the old academy on Main Street in Fairhaven, in Bristol County, in Massachusetts, and you are in the midst of the Historic American Building Survey audit, conducted by yours truly, WhisperJack. Isn't that what that one guy would say? What a nerdy reference. Anyway, this is a late 18th century school building which represents the customs of that period, that meaning late 18th century, with interesting architectural features. That's what we're told. Also building date 1798, although they did do some repairs in 1908 or so, 1906. Yep, that's what my notes say. Look at the substructure here. Just look at it. Just look at the weather vane. Just soak it all in, America. I guess this is a fuzzy clock. They kind of wedged in there. I don't know what to make of all this. What do you guys think, huh? Typical classroom, yeah. First floor, okay. Yeah, fireplace, okay. Yep, we see it all. And we're back for a weird jaunt, as... well, they're always weird, aren't they? It appears to be that they're always weird. Weird with the weirdy. Weird in that they choose weird things to display in these historic American building surveys. As we've seen This is a aerial view of the Union Mills, which is in Bristol County. Little place called Fall River. Obviously a bit modern. Here's another aerial view. And you can see the layout of the place, just in case you were looking for a good place to paratroop in. Hopefully you found what you seek. Many people looking for answers in these dark times. Jimmy making the freaking vibrating noise. Hope that's not registered in the audio, or heads are gonna roll around here. Head is gonna roll. My head. It's a one-man show. Although I do have some fictional characters that stop in from time to time, named Jimmy and Billy, whom I dutifully, verbally abuse. If they had bodies or corporeal forms, I would abuse those as well. Don't get me wrong. It's only because of the lack of that, thereof, in which their bodies that they don't have are spared from the abuse that I can't dole out to said bodies which don't exist. And I hope that made sense, though I doubt it. In any case, if you're just joining us, well, you'll just have to catch up. Now, this Union Mill was the first Fall River textile company to be financed by stock subscriptions. Usually the early textile industries were dominated by a particular ethno-religious group. So we'll just assume that Mr. Hale Remington was part of this group, who organized the company, and he was the first in Fall River to be financed, as I said, by stock subscriptions. It was built of granite in 1859, and it took 1 year to build. The original barn roofs with attics were later raised, like the roof, to provide an additional story for each of the major structures, which you can see here, and possibly also rent, and also there. Just look at the age of that bad boy. 1865, eh? A granite building of such scale. A remarkable feat, and I repeat, a remarkable feat, and I repeat, a remarkable feat, and I repeat. And there's the proof. The proof of the date, hacked into the old granite there. What foresight our forefathers had to foresee there'd come a time when we would doubt their very stories. But, of course, they've nipped that in the bud, haven't they, with their cleverly placed inscriptions. Curiouser and curiouser, aren't these buildings? Hold on a second. I need to recalibrate some stuff here. Switch some things around on the unseen side, or the backside, as it were. The part of the survey that receives spankings. Now then, picking up where I left off, this place is on Pleasant Street. The architect was a Josiah Brown, though builders and contractors and suppliers are completely unknown. And sources of information come from an authentic account of the value of property destroyed in the Great Fire in Fall River, which was published in July 2nd, 1843, which, oddly enough, is 15 years before this was allegedly built, and it was found on page 33, just thought you should know that. Analysis of the mills of Fall River and New Bedford as an investment, which is an unpublished document to be found in the Harvard Library, which didn't come about till another 80 years, so, lots of various papers and things describing the situation and all that. Well, really, while the building is said to have been well constructed and generally sound still, there is evidence in the major wood beams that there's decay, and of course it is poorly maintained. But that's how we protect our heritage, boys. We poorly maintain it with pride. Yes, sir. Let them vines run rampant. And this bad boy's for rent. Look at this beauty. Bob howdy. Anyway, a beautiful old building, a beautiful old mysterious complex, really, with far too much trim simply to be an ordinary sight. Nice little fire hydrant there, little remnants of the old world. And there she stands in the midst of a vast sea of change in suburbia as the plane orbits, and you get a final glimpse of her, because I'm pretty sure, based on the descriptive terms, look at these towers here, producing something, no doubt, possibly rubber tires, based on the proliferation of them along the coast, which some people might say is an eyesore and/or bad for the environment. I think those people are little negative Nancys, personally. A lovely old world banger, in a way. I mean, man, quite the industry here. This textile mill. No real story that were given about this for some reason, though not surprising, since it seems to be the case in this early part of the survey. They don't really like to tell us too much other than what we can derive from our own intuition and the visual observations made. But here we are, and there you are. Wow, look at that. Beautiful old steampunk boilers. My lands, what an operation. And I wish I knew more about it. Oh, yes, I does. 1871, we're told here, by the little helpful plaque. Quite fancy. Look at it. He's cute. These little eyes here, his meows. No drawing necessary. And this is quite an extensive photo shoot. We don't get this with a lot of properties, which feeds my suspicion that this is part of a mitigation effort once this building has been destroyed, to photograph it so that later on you can look back in horror and see what you've lost. That's what it looks like to me. Wow, look at that. Just encircled by highway. Ever the noose draws tighter around the old world. That is a very fitting photograph right here by the railway. No doubt making it much easier. Telltale trim here on these little remnants. Hard to imagine just constructing such an operation in the early 1800s, isn't it? The entire floor being brick, and it's just hard to imagine this kind of foresight to feed such a place when we're told this is what? This is in the midst of the Civil War this is built? 1865? I mean, seems like funds would be a little tight, and things would be different, but no. Seems like that's when we do our best work. That's what it appears to me. Oh my hell, I ain't nobody. But this is the Metacomt Mill. I suppose I should back up here just let you know when the old one ended and the new one began. Here is the Metacomt Mill in Fall River. Part of the New England Textile Mill Survey, we're told. And it's the oldest existing mill in Fall River, built in 1847 by the Fall River Iron Works. And it was patterned on the Old English mills in its ample width. Significant as the only one remaining on the original site of the city's textile factories. This was later named the American Print Works No. 6. Metacomt seems to be a much better name, Tim O'Brien. And it had 5.5 stories originally. Later it was raised to 6. Raised or dug out, I don't know. And other additions were made, and it was initially powered by a water turbine. That's the story that we're told. And this is in Bristol County, if I hadn't mentioned that. I just did. Unknown architect, builder, or supplier, but somehow we know the date, 1847. Now, 50 years later, they added on to it, and we were told at the time of the survey, which was sometime in the 70s, that generally, though very well constructed, this mill is sound, but there is some evidence of decay, and the building and its surroundings are poorly maintained as ever. Funny double doors here, huh? And funny no doors here. Whatever happened here, it's been wiped off the face of the earth. Probably some original logo or something, I would imagine. A drawbridge in this era. How dare you? And there's the water that once powered the old gal. Here's where you can play poo sticks up on the bridge there. Which doesn't look like it has an exit, but still. Up on the causeways where you'll be having the most fun. Take it from me. Just look how many bricks it would take to make this massive chimney. My lands. That is quite the impressive feat. And is it necessary? I don't know. What number here? But I wonder if it's necessary, to have such a massive chimney. It must be, I guess. Although several smaller ones would seem to suffice, unless, of course, these buildings were repurposed and originally had some other, use. I don't know. It's up for you to decide, guys. We're just out here trying to interpret history through our own little pea brains the best way we can. No doubt we get it wrong, but no doubt we're also told very wrong, How do you know when a place was built if you don't know anything about who built it? Seems odd. Unless maybe, you came upon it later and it was like, well, we know for sure it was here in this date, but we don't know anything else about it. That would make sense. But if you know the exact date it was built, it seems weird that that's all you would know. I don't know, it just seems like it to me. This one here is a the Richard Borden Manufacturing Company on Rodman Street in Fall River as well. And it was considered to be one of the most efficiently designed textile mill of its time. The number one granite mill, which was the first to abandon the barn-type roof, was built in 1873. One of the most efficient structures for manufacturing purposes in the entire country, we're told. Number 2 mill was built in 1889. No telling which one's number 1 or which one is number 2. Kind of looks like the same structure to me. But again, my brain is pea-sized, and so any conclusions I'm coming to are filtered through, the cheesecloth of a mindless fool. Advanced frocks. I like that. Are we wearing frocks these days? Or are we just calling them other things? I know if I was wearing a frock, I'd never admit it. You'd have to beat the information out of me with a stick. Some might even say you'd have to beat the frock out of me. I'll be all week, folks. Don't forget to tip your no doubt cranky bartender. I'm a little rusty here. Man, I know I keep promising this, but things are about to change here on my end. A lot more free time, and I'm about to crank up the content to levels unseen before, at least on this channel. I know I've made that promise before, like a week ago, but I still mean it. Oh, it's coming. You just wait. This is the Devil Mills. Devil? Feel free to correct me. They are the only remaining major mill buildings in the city with mansard roofs. Love those qualifiers. Built of brick in 1868, and then later on they built more of it in brick, and later on they added dormers and French mansard roofs. At least that's what we're told. How much of it do you believe? Look at the foundation on this one. What the heck's going on there? Oh, it's just to make loading easier. Perhaps. No one knows. 1867, we know it was built, well, at least sometime between that and 1909. Again, no architect known, or builder, or contractor, or supplier. Somewhere around 1890 to 1909, in the 20-year gap, they added the boiler house. Who can be bothered to remember stuff like that? Gorgeous roof. I do wonder if it was original. I mean, they claim that they added it later. Yeah, sure. But, I squint suspiciously at just about everything. Look at that lovely wrought iron railing. Seems a little silly to waste it on a fire escape. Now, I did read once in some blip, one of these surveys of someone who's being a little more honest, that the fire escape used to be part of the electric infrastructure and in fact was used to carry current. And this came from an official source. That was part of it. So one wonders if indeed this sort of fire case with this sort of intricate railing was the actual tech, and these stairs were just access to it in the way that you would have a causeway over a dam. It wasn't really a fire escape. It was more of a way to access and maintain, rather than, I don't know. That's just what it seems to me like a possibility based on that information, which is given to me by a trusty source. And that source is this pigeon right here. Carried a message all the way from Rivendell. True story. He said with a convincing and most satisfying sip. Cool building, man. Look at that thing. Wow, I'd be shocked if I was still around today. But unfortunately, we are not told that information. What is that, an old Thunderbird? I think, sweet. Bring back fins on cars, please. Now look at this. Even in this early drawing, you've got some questionable foundation stuff going on here. When it looks like loading isn't an issue, unless you're talking about loading 2 people on a carriage, which is carted around by Shadowfax. It's amazing. These old pictures, those drawings of lifelike. Not much activity for such a massive building. And this is probably in proportion to the population at the time, would be my guess. So just odd. You'd think it'd be like lines of carriages ready to go. Instead you get like a little pram here and there, like carrying one person. Like where are the wagons and trains ready to cart these textiles off that required a 5-story massive structure like this with 1 billion windows? I mean, how many people work here? Even if you got 1 person per room, you look at it, 100 people? More than that. There's a lot of windows. And there's probably a lot more people than 1 person per window. Just seems odd, don't it? And I just love what you've done with the lot next door. BMX track was till Jimmy bust his chin open and then made it shut it down. Fucking Jimmy, he messes everything up, I know. We had a cool ramp that led right into the water there, dude. You could do a backflip or gainer right off your bike. It was dope. But now, just a wasteland. A photographer goes out of his way to take a look at the 1 busted window pane. You're focusing on the negative, dude. You need to look at the bigger picture. And yeah, I'm kind of filibustering because there's not much information, okay? You think this stuff is just easy, dude? You friggin' do it. You do it. This is the Charlton Mill, only an S away from being named after the famous dance. Built in 1910, this building was the last granite mill constructed in Fall River. Signifies the refinement of the mill building design and its extreme width and large window area. As you can see, built by Charlton Mill. No, I'm sorry. Its name is Charlton Mill. It was built by William T. Henry, the engineer. And, Just look at it. Just you look at it. Stone foundation, stone everything, actually. And there are towers, or there were towers. And it says that the chimney is made of stone, but I mean, clearly this is just brick. I don't know. I mean, maybe there's something wrong with me, but that to me looks like it's made of brick. So I started calling that the not chimney, but looks very chimney-ish to me. Goodly lords. My lands, look at this beauty. Unbelievable. And this one, hubba. I'll take that. I'll take all you got of that. This is also in Fall River. This is an academy building, we're told. The Academy of Music. Constructed by the Borden family. That's right. The same Borden family that had the mill. And the theater that exists in here is to be demolished. That's what we were told based on the date of this survey, which is around 1979. It was built by the Borden family, textile entrepreneurs of the Fall River, with Ruskinian Gothic details, designed by Hartwell and Swayze of Boston in 1875. The Academy of Music was a local cultural center, housing performances by nationally renowned actors and actresses, as well as concerts, lectures, civic events, and that sort of thing. Now, like I said, it was erected in 1875. Mr. Hartwell, H.W. Hartwell, appears to have been in charge, but convalescing from surgery in 1875, he left the commission in care of his partner, A.E. Swayze. They had a reputation already, these two, from designing the Central Congregational Church and the Borden Mansion, both with Gothic details. And Lydia Borden, the widow of Nathaniel B. Borden, conveyed the land to her 3 children, Simeon, Nathaniel Jr., and Louisa, for $1. That's correct. They mortgaged part of the building to the bank and eventually sold it in the 1880s. And apparently the original theater was reopened as a movie theater. The Academy of Music, that is, after extensive renovations. You know, new seats installed, balconies closed, a new General Electric sound system was hooked up. Air conditioners were probably put in the 1950s. And there was a chandelier that the cleaning of which made the papers. That's right. According to the newspaper, the chandelier in the center, mark of distinction in the past, has been renovated and polished until it blazes with a veritable sunburst when lighted. Man, what happened to those kind of newspaper writers? How corny were they? Give me more of that, please. Well, either that or give me more of, like, Morvo from Futurama. Puny mortals! This week I predict doom and gruesome death! That kind of thing. That'd be funny. Now, there were burlesque leg shows, but the high-minded Puritans of the area, due to that, they fared poorly. And so people preferred operettas and drama and comedy and things like that. Which saddened and no doubt disheartened the few leg show fanatics of the area. Nevertheless, there was a forerunner of vaudeville who played repeatedly. Her name was Charmian, a lovely lady who did a disrobing act on a trapeze, ending, of course, still fully dressed. Not sure how one disrobes and then upon dismount is fully dressed. That seems disingenuous. We're told Frank Mayo played Davy Crockett, another deep state deception after year after year after year, to capacity houses with everyone waiting for the scene in which he used his massive arm as a bolt for the door on which his enemies were pounding. "You'll never take me alive, Santa Ana," he's said to have not. But anyway, the theater was famous, okay? That's all you need to know. And here it is, closed for good. And here's the delicious trim. Wow. Look at that. Even when you bricked up windows back in the day, you did it with class, herringbone patterns and Versailles patterns and the likes. What a beautiful place. These theaters, you know, they are just suspiciouser than hell. Always. I mean, what else are you going to do with a big old grand room like that? Just unbelievable. How beautiful. Now, let me find out if it's still there, although locals could probably tell me. No spoilers. Apparently during the 1880s, wow, so already, the Academy of Music was used on stage for public seances. Spiritualist groups apparently made no secret of their trapdoors and secret wires so fine as to be invisible from even a close distance. And others made their living by debunking spiritualism, showing how various tricks were performed on the stage. Isn't that very much the world we live in? On the one hand, you have the story, the fake story, or the spun story. Then on the other hand, you have the alternative story, which debunks the original story. And really, both acts are conducted by the same theater staff. What's the truth? Somewhere in between. How's that for an analogy and a metaphor for the way that we truthers attempt to decipher the riddle? Put that in your pipe and truth smoke it. What a glorious ceiling. Together, apart, together, apart, together, apart. Missing. Who ripped that one out? What butthead? You ruined the sequence. Does he love me? He loves me not. He loves me. He loves me not. Vacancy. Good Lord, look at this one. Now this is what I'm talking about, dude. This is the Massachusetts old world that I've been hankering for, dude. Back in Cape Cod, all we got was a bunch of, interesting, charming, cute, quaint little homes. But I'm looking for this stuff, this mystery stuff. Like, who the believe constructs this kind of thing in this era. Highly suspicious. Don't mind us, just playing a little putt-putt on the old lawn here. And here, meaning the William R. Rodman House in New Bedford, Massachusetts. A fine granite mansion of the 1830s, long inhabited by some of the leading families of New Bedford, typifying the gracious life and prosperity based on whaling and shipping industries. And the architect Russell Warren is accredited to these buildings, which was built in 1833, we are told. At one point, it was owned by the heirs of the Hathaways. Presently, however, owned by the Jewish Community Center of Bedford. At least, that's what they say. And the architect designs, as I said, were supposedly furnished by Russell Warren, who long ago we read all about in Rhode Island. New Bedford, of course, tipped the whaling and shipping industries, which I learned all about in this board game here that I own, called New Bedford. That's right, I am that dorky. A riveting tale of whaling and shipping, I suppose, and town building. Although no mention of the Rodmans in this here game. But nonetheless, my dorky historical hobbies aside, this here building was owned and occupied at one point by Abraham Howland, the first mayor of New Bedford. However, we are told there are many classified papers that exist in the old Dartmouth Historical Society which may possibly contain information relating to this building, but we'll never know. We are told it is in excellent condition, and it appears that way. My lands, look at that beautiful ship. And as ever, we are treated to an array of photographs showing how the homes were heated, I guess, fireplaces and random furnaces, unless it's all about this portrait here in the wall. Maybe it's of Mrs. Bedford. Rather crooked here on the railing, aren't we? Or is the ground crooked? Find out next time. Or this time. Or never. Those are the options. This time, next time, or never. William Roch Jr. house. Good thing his name wasn't Mike, or that joke would write itself. Not to mention the fact that he lives on 15 Johnny Cake Hill. What a great street name. Johnny Cake Hill. I find that to be far funnier than it actually is. Present occupant is the Mariners as a rooming house, and it's the home of an early prominent New Bedford Quaker, one of the oldest remaining in the city, now a local landmark. That's correct. It was built around 1790 or 1800, though the sign on the front says 1787, and we're told it was moved about 200 feet from its original site, somewhere around 1850. They also removed the fireplace that was in the northeast parlor, the surveyor believes. No one really knows. A lot of this is based on a photograph that's just called Seaman's Bethel and Mariner's Home on Johnny Cake Hill. Currently owned by the New Bedford Port Society, at least at the time of this survey. Oddly, all of the fireplaces are described as being blocked up. The Seaman's Bethel on the west side of Johnny Cake Hill, which is a waterfront chapel linked sentimentally with the whaling industry. And also Herman Melville's novel, Moby Dick. A rather suspicious inclusion, I'd say. Allegedly built in 1832 for the New Bedford Port Society, which is still in their possession today. Allegedly rebuilt in 1867, where they added a tower and a fictitious pulpit shaped like the prow of a ship. And we don't get to see any of those things. Well, I guess you get to see the tower back there, kind of, in the single picture they've provided. And we're told it's an old meeting house, rather picturesquely located in the waterfront area of New Bedford, which was largely altered. And I mean, you can kind of tell. I mean, look at the whole top piece. Looks like it was just a sheath for some very old stone structure that was underneath. That's just my observation, and good golly wackles, look at this mamba jamba. What a beauty. A true old world banger. That I can say with such certainty, with much certainty. The Congregational Church in New Bedford. Very substantial. Built in the 1830s for one of the important congregations in New Bedford from the design of Alexander Jackson Davis. That's what we're told. And what we can see is, well, that old Russell Warren of Rhode Island and A.J. Davis of New York were given the credit for constructing this church. We are told of photographs that exist in the date to the 1840s, a lithograph really, which show the original building exterior. And this is an amazing building. I mean, look at this thing. It looks like a Gothic castle. What kind of church needs to be built in this fashion? Ridiculous. A rather imposing, austere church, and we are told it remains largely unaltered to this very day. Pieces of granite that range from 2 to 9 feet long. I wonder from whence comes this granite, and by what means and methods, and for what purpose. We are told the original bell, now cracked, is placed in the front of the building as a feature of the setting, and was replaced by a more modern bell, one that didn't have all those dusty cracks in it. Just look at that organ. My lands, is that beautiful. And we are told literally nothing about it. The organ, I mean. Beautiful vaulted ceiling. My lands. What a beauty. ingenuity. Quite unbelievable. And I mean that in a literal sense, actually, that this would be constructed in 1830. And here's an old lithograph with those rather muddy roads. And yeah, little battlements up here. Very odd in our four-pronged tower, as we colloquially know them as, you know. And boosh, here we go with another four-pronged tower. Just look at this bad boy. Now, this is the kind of Massachusetts buildings that I was hoping to find. And you ain't disappointing. No, sir. This is the Custom House, as if you couldn't read that tiny font. What it's doing with a tower like this is anyone's business, but we're going to make it ours. An early federal building during a period when the merchant marine was growing rapidly. Yeah, apparently it was needed. Owned by the U.S. government, occupied by the U.S. government, now and forever. Built in 1834, several architects are in various places given the credit, which is odd. A few people claim it was Robert Mills. Other people claim it was Russell Warren from Rhode Island. Others say it was Robert Smith. Apparently, no one really knows. The sources of information on this are a book by Daniel Ricketson called New Bedford of the Past, which is essentially a book of reminiscences, and a old Dartmouth manuscript that is in the Historical Society in Johnny Cake Hill, which has photographs of homes and public buildings, with notes by Henry B. Worth. And it is said that a number of old documents were sent from the New Bedford Custom House to the Coast Guard Academy of New London, Connecticut, and to the Peabody Museum. It is said that these documents may or may not have included early drawings or plans of the building. It is not said why you would send those documents away from the place where it belonged to another state, and then shrouded in mystery. At what point they kept the post office in the lower half of this, which is unsurprising considering its very federal look, and the use that buildings like this normally are assigned, just stands to reason. What doesn't stand to reason is why you'd have crooked windows like this and like this. This makes no sense. But you already know that. There's our old friend, the checkered floor, and a rather basic look at a rather basic handrail. For your delight and mine. And no telling what we're looking at here, but it is obviously underneath the building in the strange basement, of which we're told almost nothing about, really. We're told at one point there were 4 chimneys, but now there's been replaced by a modern brick one, which did look out of place when you looked at it from afar. Yeah. So apparently they're trying to say that there were 4 chimneys in the corners at one point. That makes sense. That these 4 things were chimneys? I don't know about that. It seems rather weird. I mean, aren't these kind of like load-bearing columns? It would look like it to me. But I don't know what this is. There's no caption or nothing. Just a random picture of a creepy dugout where we keep the trash cans. Very curious why you would hack into the stone, allegedly, to make a place just to put your trash cans. Seems like a lot of work for these early Quakers. This is the Merchants and Mechanics Bank building, or at least it was. And if you hadn't guessed by now, it was built by our old friend Russell Warren from Providence, Rhode Island, where anywhere you need a Greek Ionic temple architect, well, he just pops up his grubby little face and gets his grubby little dick beaters to working on it. Apparently, it takes him no time. This is part of the commercial building district in the old waterfront, and the north half was built for the Mechanics Bank, and the south half was built for the Merchants Bank. So they did a little do-si-do. Locked arms, joined forces, and voila! We come up with a name for it. Now, one column allegedly, the missing one, here, was destroyed in 1955 by a truck, which smashed into it. Which is kind of funny that they didn't replace it. I wonder if you couldn't. That would say something, wouldn't it, about the times that we live in versus the times of before? Apparently it was so easy to throw these things up within a year or so. And again, with the funny foundations, as you can see, all through this area, and the completely overblown columns, which no doubt were once much more ornamented than all of this would have you believe in its very plain look today. But a beautiful building, and I certainly wish I could see more of it rather than just this one picture from the front. I guess you get to see its ugly backside. Yeah, tell me how that makes sense. Any of that. Just building like this at all. It don't, and you can't. Wow, that's a cool look at the column, actually, to that window. Good job, surveyor, dude. Showing a little flair there. That's pretty dope. That's where the leprechauns hide so they can pop out at you and scare you out of your wits. At least that's what I'd do with the space. What would you do with it? Let me know in the comments below. Now, what we have here is the Institute for Savings. Sounds suspiciously like a rebranded bank, don't it? It's merely a commercial building erected at the peak of New Bedford's prosperity. It's a rare extant sample of Italian Renaissance influence on mid-19th century architecture in early America. We're told 1853 was the date of construction, and we are told that it was built by, you guessed it, Russell Warren, the man who built all of New Bedford, apparently, and all of Rhode Island. Now, in my opinion, we are told that there's doubt. The surveyor actually sheds doubt on the idea that this building was to be attributed to Russell Warren, and they only say that this is because of a nearly identical facade in Providence, Rhode Island, on the Providence Institution for Savings, erected in 1854, so they really actually do not know. But they're just saying, well, it's identical to the one there, so it's probably the same, and that is really a poor way to do history, especially if these buildings are, in lots more places than just one, as we've seen. They're actually pretty much everywhere. Monumental bank buildings that look like this. Now, we're told it's deteriorated and, obviously it's being used for an auto parts store at the time of this writing and photography. But I don't know if it's around, I guess, 1961. Is this official date of the writing here? Those cars look like they're actually earlier. So maybe the pictures don't match the write-up. I don't know, man. This is all confusing than hell. But it is a lovely building, regardless of who built it, and I wish that we could look more at it. Just look at these foundations here. Just this whole area, all of New Bedford, is very suspicious. And I would like to say that the board game I have does not reflect that suspicious nature to these buildings, okay? They make it all seem very plausible, but we'll get into that some other day. Propaganda that's promulgated all throughout the board game industry. A seedy haven for government misinformation, and one in which you probably never suspected. Neither did I, till I wandered wide-eyed and bushy-tailed right into the thick of it. But that's for another day. On this day, we'd like to discuss the William Tolman warehouse, which is what you're looking at right there. One of the oldest remaining commercial buildings in the area. And we're told, somewhere around 1790, the Russells and the Kemptons of New Bedford, the Russell family, one of the old 13, the ones. And we're told that just shortly after the purchase of the land, 1790, this was constructed. Not really told who or where, but there is evidence of random staircases and things like that were modified and changed, as you could imagine, in something so old. And clearly, it's got some history. Repurposements abound, barn doors just laying there, wheels that to nowhere spin. No doubt a very creepy place and rewarding to explore. Oh, were I but there. Here we are, the John Harrison building. This is also in New Bedford, just a simple representative commercial building of the early 19th century, now used for wholesale beef precisions, as you can tell. Built by John Harrison about 1820 after there had been a disastrous fire in the locality, to everyone's surprise. It was later owned by the aforementioned George Howland and William Roch, and in 1906 it was sold to James Humphrey Jr. for an ice plant. Since then, they've bricked up a few windows and doors, and actually faces a narrow street which still retains its old cobblestone paving from yesteryear. One picture, that's all you get. The Charles Russell Building. Also, if you haven't guessed, in New Bedford, and here is just another typical representative of the commercial building in the old business district. Also belonging to the Russell family, as it appears just about everything was. A store and an office with odd openings. On the bottom, as you could have guessed. Interesting logos here. The old phoenix flying again. Everywhere you go. North Front Street and Rose Alley. That's all we're told. This is a warehouse. History of the ownership is undetermined. Current owners believe that it had something to do with a New England Boiler Repair and Welding Company. And they might have thought that because of the sign that's on the front. Apparently they're very good detectives. Because I wouldn't have guessed that. Here's the backside. Clearly amended on. Clearly in a little bit of a deteriorated shape. But what are you going to do, huh? When your buildings are hundreds of years old, no one knows where they came from, or who they went to, or who owned them, or who built them. What a way to conduct history. Just go, but I painted this here sign on it, so that's what it must be. Another commercial building in New Bedford here, currently vacant at the time of this survey. The date of erection is undetermined, also unknown. Perhaps the 1840s is what the surveyor decided to guess, and they can tell by various modifications that it has been modified. That's what they say. I'm locked to believe them. One wonders why they would include buildings like that on the survey. I mean, I'm grateful for every picture of the old cultural heritage that I can get, but, sometimes it's a little odd, the choices that are made here, and what is allowed to trickle down to us common folks who are standing with arms outstretched, pleading for just droplets of information. Please, sirs, please. This is the Wamsutta Mill, also in New Bedford, and this one we're told literally nothing about, despite it being a completely massive and impressive old world banger. Brick, we are told, told, built in 1847. The first textile mill in New Bedford, and the first one designed for steam power. And that's all the information you get, but you get to feast your eyes on that glorious tower, which seems like it's kind of tilted at the top. Rather impressive. Yet another mill in the area. Man, this one's huge. Just look at that thing. Why, it must take up the whole city block. And it's the only information you can give us. Just build 1847. Buh. It's only on the edge of this amazing body of water, and just looks like it has crazy history, but no. Pay no attention to that massive brick square chimney. Pay no attention at all. Okay, well, hopefully we revisit that one some point, because I'd like to know more. But as for now, the survey keeps marching on, as surveys wont to do. This is the Samuel Rodman Jr. house, and I'm getting a feeling that these Rodmans were prominent early members of the society, and this land was part of the homestead farm of Abraham Russell. Of course, the old Russell connection yet again, which in 1819 was sold by the Bedford Bank to pay its heavy mortgage, and then this section passed into the hands of William Roch again, and later purchased by Samuel Rodman. Guys just passing around properties to each other, these Rodmans and Roches and Russells. And it's been in the possession of the Rodman family since it was built, despite the history that I just told you that would say otherwise. And this is the plainest in appearance of any of the great houses of New Bedford, we are told. Probably because they covered the entire outer surface with plaster, covering up what was once a finely ornamented example of New Italian-esque Renaissance, or something like that. Originally, they had the lot that went all the way down to School Street, but a daughter of Samuel Rodman decided to donate to the church the south half, and then they built another building there. And that's all from local lore. No published manuscripts can verify that, so, you decide to believe it, that's up to you. And that is an interesting door mechanism. What is that? Is that a lock? That is very overwrought. Can't say I've seen anything like that. It's like they're just trying to lock shame us or something, dude. Like, oh, you don't have those kind of locks? You must have good jobs to pay for those kind of locks, you uppity bastards. The Joseph Grinnell Mansion, an imposing granite mansion of the 1830s, typifying the homes of the leaders of business and society. Indeed. And I'll bet you can guess who they said built it. And if you had Russell Warren, you won! Built in 1836 by the architect Russell Warren, who really, at this point, has just got to be one of the most buildingest guys in all the world. It's rather ridiculous, actually, to assume that one guy built all these massive friggin' mansions. Look at this place. Whizow. Kind of weird, actually. Kind of looks like it's been modernized to the point of crappiness. That's all you get? What? They tell us it's one of the grandest mansions ever, but you can't see the grandness, only the fireplace, of course, which looks like a false wall. And actually, as one of my beloved viewers pointed out, many of these fireplaces actually look like they're in some sort of a false, hidden wall, which is interesting. It makes me squint my eye suspiciously. Oh, and then we jump to this beauty, where Dorothy lived, right before the Great Twister. The hell's going on here? Close up of these old newspapers? And the fireplace again? No, we're going back to this old stuff? This is an artsy surveyor with this freaking photo shoot? The heck's going on here? Let me guess, this is supposed to tell us some story about the Norton Cotton Mill house. That's what we're told it is. Okay. And actually, I guess I'm wrong, because there literally is nothing about this. I don't know why there's so many pictures. Well, whatever. Staircase. Buh. Wow. What is going on the roof of this place? How do you justify that? What is that? I'll tell you what it is, Jimmy. It's the Derby Summer House. Allegedly, it's known as the Glen Magna estate, moved from the Elias Derby farm in Peabody, Massachusetts. Moved, huh? We're told it's a garden house built by Samuel McIntyre, and the sculptor was John and Simeon Skillin, a rare and excellent example of a formal 18th century garden house designed with the lightness of detail which characterized the federal style. The statue is known as the Shepherdess, and is actually a replica, the original being damaged by fire and held in the Peabody Institute. And this building was moved in 1901 for reasons unknown. Rather elaborate. Whatever a garden house is, there it is. I don't think that's wait, that can't be the Shepherdess. That must be the Shepherdess. Well then, who's this guy? The shepherd? I see now. This is the almost life-size, gardener. I guess the gardener is original, but the shepherdess is not. She's a fraud, a fake, a phony. She's like my father. You got an egg in your pocket? Throw it right at her. Right between the old shepherdess eyes. I guess this is all that's inside. It's just a place where half statues like to hang out and congregate. You know, this is an employee break room. You're almost up, Teddy Roosevelt guy. But on the other hand, it's a place for leisure. A place for your psychiatrist to conduct his afternoon sessions. And a very interesting chandelier. What a curious building. Why move it? Why have it? But, you know, sure you could use it something cool rather than just a place for a few statues to loiter about and get all out of shape. And this here is the Lawrence Machine Shop in Lawrence. Built over a 2-year period of time in 1846 for the purpose of manufacturing and repairing textile machinery for all the newly established and aforementioned textile mills. It's one of the 2 oldest mills in the city and one of the few stone mill buildings in the Merrimack Valley. Apparently, they originally used it for metalwork and pattern making, but financial difficulties forced them to expand into the manufacture of heavy machinery. Interesting how financial difficulties force you to expand. Usually, I think it's the other way around, but somehow they were struggling so hard they got into the work of designing and repairing and constructing locomotives. Then there was a depression in 1859. Well, actually, it was actually in 1857. But due to it, in 1859, the assets were sold at an auction to the Everett Mills, who converted the building into a cotton mill, which had 38,000 spindles and 11,033 looms. Couldn't round up on that one, huh? Now, initially, power was derived from 2 large water turbines in the basement, which were converted at one point to hydroelectric installation, which still operates today. And it's now being used, well, at least in the 60s, for light manufacturing, retail sales, and warehousing. We're told it's still in good condition, and it's constructed of field stone, and it has a crappy foundation that's rather suspicious and half submerged, although I added part of that based on my own observations. Quite an operation here, and quite an impressive feat of construction there. On 1846, looking quite a bit older, parts of it at least, and well, that story will lead you to believe, huh? Especially for a place that was really only did what it was supposed to do, or did what it was allegedly constructed to do, for 10 years, and it just switched. That's just odd. Here's the old aerial view of the entire complex to give you an idea of how massive it really is, and the waterways that surround it. This one almost looks like a model. Very interesting stuff here. And here's a random fireplace. I didn't just insert that. That's part of the survey, folks, okay? There's no telling why, but there it is. This is the Pemberton Mill, built in 1855, which they produced staple cotton goods and for 4 years until the structure collapsed 5 years after it was built, killing 88 people and injuring 300 others. The ruins of the building were sold at an auction, and a new mill was constructed on the same site. 88 people, huh? On the January 10th. Lots of ones and eights going on there, you know? Just something I repeatedly see time after time again. What does it mean? I don't know. Just the numbers seem a little suspicious, you know what I mean? When you see them over and over and over, you just got to wonder. After 5 years, it collapsed, and it was rebuilt the same year. Interesting story. Whoa, what is that? Just look at that old tower. That is super cool. Looks like it belongs in St. Petersburg. But no, just look down here. Look at what we're telling you is a mill. Very, very bizarre. Wow, look at that staircase. That's pretty awesome. All that ironwork. No telling if this building's here today, but hopefully so. Like a great thing to go to waste. Rather impressive, I'd say. Always a fire or some disaster, you know, taking these buildings out in these early decades. And things being moved around and rebuilt, and it just seems odd, you know. Doesn't seem to happen much in the modern times. It does happen, but not with the same frequency. Except they build things way quicker back then. Now, this is of little individual historical significance, this Lynn Realty Company building, number 3, which I think it was built in 1902, but, you know, no one knows. And no one knows what it was built for, or the reasons why it should be so much smaller than all the other Lynn Realty Company factories built in the same time period. So really, just because it says Lynn Realty Company on it, we're going to name it that, though it doesn't seem to match. They tell us that the second story was added in 1911, and admittedly, it does look different, and we're told someone named H.W. Rogers built it. That's about it. Weird that they added this second story, but didn't really match the brickwork. I mean, it looks kind of funny through here. And here is the backside of it, where you can see just how dumpy it actually is. Very kind of a confusing building here. Why are we spending so much time photographing it if it's of no real importance? Which is what the survey led with. This is of no importance. Let's take lots of pictures. Now, this in here is the Lynn Realty Company building number 8, which is built at the same time as the other ones, which all represent the last major wave of factory building in this business district, which was 1900 to 1915 when reinforced concrete became more popular locally. However, this wasn't built from reinforced concrete. As you can tell, it was built of yellow brick, which is its actually only decorative feature. The rest of the building conforms to the standard red brick factory construction typical of that era, which we just told you is when reinforced concrete became more popular. So none of that makes sense. As usual, it's like whoever comes up with these stories just intentionally try to confuse by telling you about an era. Well, this is built when the era of reinforced concrete was all the rage, and that's what everyone was doing, but not this one. That's why we put it on here, and that's why we led with that. I love these, like, sort of hinged brick corners. I mean, they look almost like Lego buildings, but there's just something super cool about it. Anyway, it was mostly occupied by shoe manufacturers. That's what we're told. Just look at that narrow, mysterious street. Just you look at it. Yellow brick and all. How cool is that? Looking like it's a little worse for wear, though, huh? And here's the creepy inside where we used to keep people in cages until that became not cool, which is actually only about 5 minutes before the guy showed up with the camera. Oh, good lord! The surveyor's here! Free the prisoners immediately! It wouldn't do to have that on our personal record. Not at all. Why did they have those cages in there? The shoe manufacturing? Shoes don't need cages. Maybe it's a bunch of Tweety bites. Jeremiah Lee is the name of this house. Built in 1768, one of the finest and most elaborate Georgian houses in the northern colonies. That is quite the claim there. I see the graceful and the opulence of it, I do. We're told this is the physical representation of the wealth and aspirations of New England merchant prince Jeremiah Lee. A merchant prince, huh? Interesting. I've never heard someone referred to as a merchant prince before. That's rather, it reeks of bootlickery. The house was used as a bank, which is not suspicious at all, in 1804, 1809. In Marblehead. Ah, Marblehead, we meet again. Marblehead is a very suspicious town with a very curious history, which we'll have to get into sometime. It goes back to the Revolutionary War and just to George Washington. He came a-rattling his fake wooden jaws around here, and that is a very elaborate mantle and really fit only for a prince, a merchant prince at that. But again, we have this weird obsession here with just showing the fireplaces. And I don't know why that is. Is it just because of the andirons, or is it because... And my initial, when this happened in Pennsylvania, seems to be more of an East Coast thing as far as these surveys go. My initial guess was that the fireplaces were original, and so they were told to document them. Or many of them held some sort of a secret, like maybe they were used for something else, and so the surveyors were given orders to document them so that the powers that be can determine, sort of keep inventory of which places needed to still be modified. I don't know. Or retrofitted? I don't know. I can't figure out why the fireplace is such a prominent role in these old surveys, specifically on the East Coast. It remains to be seen, but here you go again. Big old house. Sure, there's lots of interesting things. Here's the dumpy fireplace. Something weird about it. And on that note, I'll cut this one a little short because I think I've run a little long. And I'll see you soon.